Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tal Hazak-Lowy, and I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Children Chicago. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Latham and Watkins for providing us this beautiful space and delicious food. Thank you very much. Friends of the Children is a mentoring organization intentionally serving the children born into facing the most risk factors and with the least protective factors in their lives. All children start in our program when they're in kindergarten, and we pair them with highly trained professional mentors who support each child's social, emotional, and academic development. We have a few of our professional mentors here. Can you all just raise your hands, please? We commit to walking beside each child and their families for 12 and a half years, no matter what. I am so glad that you all chose to come join us here this morning. Thank you for making the effort to being here in person. And for those of you that will be watching the video later, we appreciate you too. I'm very much looking forward to speaking with these two incredible panelists, and then also from you all as well. I want to start by sharing a personal story. 24 years ago, I decided to train for a marathon. When I started, I couldn't even run a mile, really. The hardest part was committing to the training, but I did. And I showed up, and eventually I crossed that finish line. Afterward, I felt incredibly proud. I expected that. But what I was surprised by is how much that taught me about myself. That I could set what felt like an unrealistic goal, follow through, and achieve it. Think of your own version of that moment. A goal you set, worked towards, and accomplished. Maybe it was a degree, a career pivot, or running your own marathon. Maybe it was finally finishing something that you put off for years. Maybe it was consistently showing up when not doing so would have been easier. That feeling, I want you to hold on to that this morning, because that is exactly what we're trying to build for children who are facing significant obstacles. We believe that that feeling has the power to change lives. The children we serve are born into the most challenging circumstances. They're growing up in Chicago's communities on the South and West Side that have faced generations of systemic racism, disinvestment, and lack of economic opportunity. We know that goal setting is a powerful tool in helping kids develop the skills and resilience they need to overcome obstacles and thrive. The research is clear. When children develop a sense of agency through goal setting, they're more likely to make sound decisions and avoid risky behavior. But a child born into significant adversity who doesn't have support will often struggle to achieve a goal. That is not for a lack of motivation. It's a neurological event. Let me explain. When a child grows up in chronic stress, their nervous system adapts to a high-threat environment, activating their fight, flight, or freeze response. We call that the downstairs brain. When the downstairs brain is in charge, the upstairs brain, the part responsible for reasoning, planning, learning, and follow-through, goes offline. This is how every human brain works. Every child enters our program in kindergarten and is supported by a professional mentor for 12 and a half years, no matter what. The consistency of that commitment is what changes the architecture of a child's developing brain. When a child experiences a trusted adult who shows up week after week, who is calm when the child is not, who repairs after conflict instead of punishing and withdrawing, the nervous system slowly learns that the world can be different than what's expected. Then the upstairs brain becomes available and then working on goals becomes possible. Every child in our program sets, works towards, and accomplishes multiple personal goals every year. The child chooses the goals for themselves. A goal assigned to a child is very different than one that they choose themselves. The child's voice is not a courtesy, it's a mechanism for ownership. For a child in early elementary school, a goal may be learning how to tie their shoes, mastering their cartwheel, or saving enough money to buy that video game they really want. Over time and with experience, they set more ambitious goals. This progression is intentional. A young child cannot think in years, but they can look at something that feels just out of reach and say, I can't do that yet, but if I work at it, I can. That is the beginning of future orientation. That is hope made concrete. Each goal that is accomplished builds a muscle, not just the skill of finishing the task, but the deeper capacity the goal achievement develops: planning, time management, problem solving, and perseverance. Year after year, that muscle gets stronger. Accomplishing goals serves two purposes. First, there's the sense of achievement that's very real, the satisfaction of completing something that required effort and persistence. Second, there's what accomplishing teaches a child about themselves. It shapes their sense of identity. I am someone who directs my own life. When a young person connects their goals to their sense of identity, they become expressions of agency and self-belief. This matters especially for children who grow up in communities shaped by violence and poverty. Goals offer something rare, a sense of control when life feels chaotic. When a child finishes a goal, we celebrate every time. Their name goes on the gold wall, they ring the gold bell, because when a trusted adult names a child's effort, names their skills, and connects it to their identity, it becomes evidence of who that child is. Set enough time by someone who genuinely believes it over enough years, that becomes an inner voice that that child carries with themselves long after our program ends. It all starts with a 5-year-old choosing something small that matters to them, and a mentor saying, you did that. That is who you are. The goal isn't the point. The person who emerges from the goal, that's the point. And that's why I'm so excited for today's conversation. I am absolutely delighted to introduce you to two rock stars. We have with us today Dr. Wendy Borlabi, Dr. B. Dr. B is a performance psychology consultant. For 9 years, she served as the director of mental performance and health for the Chicago Bulls and spent 7 years at the United States Olympic Committee. Dr. B is an executive coach, a keynote speaker, and works with businesses to enhance employee success. Dr. George Wu is a professor of behavioral science at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Dr. Wu studies the psychology of decision-making, goal setting, and motivation. Prior to joining the University of Chicago faculty in 1997, he spent 6 years at Harvard Business School and also spent time at University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. We are absolutely honored and delighted to have you both here with us. Thank you. So I had so much fun prepping for this call, and I'm so excited for you all to be able to hear from them. So people say that goal setting is valuable because it creates self-efficacy. So let's start there. My understanding is that self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to accomplish a task. So one, is my understanding correct? Why is that important? And how does goal setting fit into that? Dr. Wu, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank Tall for inviting me, and I have to say, I didn't expect to be so moved by your introduction, so thank you. And thanks to this amazing organization for all that you do. On to goals is when you were putting that together, that introduction, I'm going like, what do we have to talk about now? So I think you said it exactly right. Is that there basically are two things that goals do. Is that one is they are a conduit to performance and the kinds of achievement that we want everybody to accomplish. But second, and probably more important, it is this conduit to self-efficacy, which is something I've never been able to say fluently. Which of course then has this reinforcing cycle, which is that the goals work, they lead to better performance, they lead to improved sense of self, which then creates this encouragement for people to do this more. So,
Great, Dr. B.
So I think, just obviously going off of what you're saying, when I think about self-efficacy, it's that belief, your belief in your ability to accomplish a single task. And so when I look at self-confidence, the whole global self-confidence, self-efficacy are pieces of that global self-confidence. So when you're thinking about goal setting, it allows you to break it down. So then when you accomplish one small task, then you feel good, right? And then you want to do the next task, and then you feel good, but you piece it all together, and that's where you're able to build a self-confidence from there.
I love that. And I guess that ties into the next question, like what does goal setting actually look like? And I love sort of what you're talking about, like breaking it down. So tell me, what does goal setting actually look like?
Yeah, it's so interesting because in my work, I always hear athletes all the time say, goal setting doesn't work. It was like, it does. We just don't set goals correctly.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? We don't. We often set outcome goals, which you don't have any control over. You got to set performance. For what I do, we set performance and process goals. But everybody wants to set outcome goals. And so,
can you give an example of the difference between the two?
Sure. An outcome goal would be, I want to score 20 points in tonight's game. A performance goal would be, I want to shoot at least three three-pointers before halftime, right? So that gets you to the outcome, but you can't control it, right? So looking at that and setting goals, with the old adage, the smartest, or smart. I learned smart, but I think it's not smartest, maybe more now. But you're talking about goals, right? So, but it really does. It really does work. You want to set you want to set specific, measurable, obtainable, time. You want to set those things when you're looking at goals because that does help you accomplish it. You want to, when we say ink it, don't think it, right? Or think it, don't ink it, whatever the phrase is, right? Because we say it in our head, I'm gonna work out this year. But what does that really mean? You got to get real specific. Tuesdays and Thursdays for 30 minutes, I'm going to go to the gym and ride the bike. There's your goal, right? That's your goal. And when you're looking at it that way, I think it's easier to accomplish. But again, I think we always think about outcome goals, and then people are like, oh, goal setting doesn't work, but it really does work. It's so good when you do it, and when you learn how to do it correctly.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is that I think the literature distinguishes between these kind of goals that are chronic and a little bit more abstract. So you want to be healthy. And then specific goals that are concrete and measurable, the kinds of things like, I am going to be healthy by losing 10 pounds by the end of April. And I think the power of the second one is that it basically makes success and failure a bright line. So, if you say I'm going to be healthy and then there's no measurement, then people get to count everything in their favor unless it's really out of lines. But the beauty about concrete goals is you can say, like, I want to score 20 points, and you scored 18. And 18 is maybe more than you've ever scored in your entire life, but it's not 20. And I think that's actually like one of the lenses that I look through goal setting, which is that there's a sort of paradox about goal setting, which is that when you set concrete goals, like every day, you basically start in the losses. And so one of the bits of psychology is that people look at gains and losses very, very differently. And typically, psychologists have talked about this as loss aversion. Being in losses or reducing losses is really motivating, and it's about twice as motivating as increasing gains. And to Dr. B's point is that one way of thinking about like a very ambitious goal, like running a marathon, well, then you might break it down to what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 30 miles per week. And running 30 miles per week is a lot easier to think about than running like 600 miles over 20 weeks. And when you think about these sub goals, is that every day you wake up and you say, like every week you say, well, I'm starting this week and I'm at minus 30. And being at minus 30 sucks. And I really want to get my head above water. And that's in some ways the magic of what goals do, is that there's this simple reframing, which you're just doing for yourself. It's like, this is like a psychological magic trick, so to speak. And it works. We can talk a little bit more about how it works.
Dr. B, you once, when we were talking to prepare for this, you talked about how goals are in service of us, right? And that if you can just talk about that, and like if you don't accomplish a goal, like you can just change the goal, like sort of why so many people are made to feel so bad by the goals they set for themselves.
Absolutely. Yes, if you don't accomplish it, change it. Shift it, alter it, reduce it, increase it, whatever the case may be. You're not bound to that specific piece, and I think it's another part of that, right? That aversion, because we're like, oh, I didn't do this. But I think when you think, oh, I'm going to run 30 miles this week, and you're only able to run 25, that's okay, right? So next week, then you run 26. Then the next week, you run 28. You continue to go in that way instead of thinking it as a failure. And in addition to that, I always like to think about, what did you learn in that process? Because we forget about that as well. We forget about the process. What happened for you to get 25? What did you learn about yourself, maybe about your family, about your work, about your health? What is that you can use for the next week, right? And so we just think about that number and then we get stuck, but there's so much good information in that process and what you're doing that you can use for the next time.
So I love that, because I think, and what I hear and what I often feel myself, right? If I set a goal, the goal just makes me feel bad about myself. And so then I don't want to set another goal because I don't want to feel bad about myself. So Dr. Wu, why is it so hard for people to set goals or to commit to goals? Like what's that limiting factor?
I think it is exactly that, which is there is this feeling of failure afterwards. And I think, and then part of it is, what I'm impressed about is obviously you having all your mentors help these kids set goals. But I'm also, of course, impressed with the idea that, like, what's a kid to do to basically figure out whether this goal is appropriate or this goal is appropriate or whatever. And I think it's getting to Dr. B's point, which is that when we set goals that are unrealistic, then we do set ourselves up to failure by definition. And I think the point of a goal is to set an ambitious but an attainable goal. And what ambitious and what attainable means depends a lot on the circumstances. So if you say, I haven't run for since I was 17 years old, and I'm going to run 30 miles this week. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. And so, I ran in college, but I just had a hip replacement on December 4th. If I set a goal of running 30 miles, then my orthopedic surgeon is really going to be very angry.
Or very happy. They'll make more money.
No, he'll be very happy about success. But I think that there's a couple parts to this. One is, how do you set the appropriate goal? But also, how do you learn the right lessons from that experience, both if it's successful and failures? And I think what Dr. B is saying is exactly right, is there are lessons to be learned in each case, and there are different ones. And I think one of the things that also we can talk about is that, take marathoning, is that the way that people are successful is that they learn habits, or they learn to work with other people. So I don't know if you did this, Paul, but what a lot of people do is they say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a buddy who I am committed to essentially going for a run at 6 a.m. And, when the alarm clock goes off at 5:42, and you go like, I'm really tired, and I'm gonna go and sleep for another hour, and then you remember the fact that like Paul has basically set up an appointment to run with me, and that is something that I think we've all learned to do as part of our lives in some place. But that's exactly it. You learn to do these kinds of things, or people help you to learn whatever these little motivational hacks are to get you to be successful.
So I love sort of an accountability partner sort of plays into a question that I have about like what role do you think that a long-term trusted relationship can have to help a child set and work towards a goal, whether it be a mentor or a coach or a teacher. Like how is that helpful for a child, Dr. B?
It shows that the person cares, which is huge, right? I think it does. And when you're sitting there talking to someone and you're asking what their goals are and you're helping them put the goals together and they're telling you what's important to them and you're helping them figure that out, you're showing that the little things that they know about and maybe the things that they don't know about, you can help them with that. And that accountability also is very important, but I think that the biggest part is that it shows that you care, and then you're able to come back and ask them, how are they doing? And then if they are a little shy about it, then maybe you can feel like, they're struggling, and then they gives you another conversation. It adds to that space of the connection and the faith that whatever they're trying to accomplish, you're going to be there to help them do it, and you're not just going to leave them aside. I mean, you can give them those little tricks, and you can ask them. And so, I think we forget. I think sometimes when we're working with kids is that they're smart. They got information too. They can tell you some stuff as well. So ask them, right? Ask them some questions, and then they can give you some pieces, and so you can work together. But not to think that we have all the information, because we don't. And they've got some of those. Right? Don't tell my kids. Yeah. But it's there, and I think that part of that, it brings that responsibility also back to them, because when you start to ask them questions and they start to feel that onus, and then they start to feel like they are doing a whole lot as well, not that you're doing it, but then they're accomplishing things. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this, right? We're trying to help them feel like they can accomplish the little things which lead to the bigger things. And I think that's the part of the responsibility for us as adults, and then just what we're doing. But just remember that when you're in that situation with them, ask them those questions, help them figure those things out, and use those nuggets to try to help them see that they can get from here to here. And it may take longer or shorter than what they think, but it's just about getting there, right? It's the old adage about, what do you call a med student that graduates with C's? Doctor.
Yeah.
It's, right? It's the same. That's right. It's there.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is that, I think of goal setting as a strategy. It's a strategy to help people direct their attention to things that ordinarily would be hard. I mean, so you don't need a goal for things that you're really motivated about naturally. You need goals for things like saving a little bit more money, which is hard for a lot of people because having a really nice dinner or buy clothes or whatever is attractive. You need goals for people who are, not inclined to wake up on an early morning and go running or whatever. And so I think part of that also means that the strategies sometimes are not appropriate for a particular time. So, going back to athletics is that one thing that mentors or coaches or wise sages can do is they can say, George, like your leg is not in very good shape right now. You were limping the last 2 minutes of 2 miles of the run yesterday. You should not be trying to run 7 miles today. And of course that's true. But sometimes when you're in that moment of trying to strive for a goal, you're utterly myopic. You are captivated by that goal, and that leads you to do unwise things. And again, the idea is that the goal or goal setting or that as a process is a strategy to help you to direct your attention in a smart way. And when it becomes something that in that moment is not so smart, then sometimes when you're inside, you don't have the wisdom to see that it's not the best way to go.
So building off of that, Dr. Wu, how does achieving goals influence everyday decision-making and long-term thinking? Like, why is that a helpful muscle for people to build?
Well, I think part of it is that, you think about planning. So a lot of why this stuff is hard is because people have a lot of other things that they need to do. So you have to fit in studying for an exam in your busy life where you have, 60 hours of work and then, your kids and a commute, and how are you going to fit this in? And the answer is, it's really hard to fit in, and that's what makes it challenging. And it's also the opposite, which is that on Saturdays when you have the whole day, you go getting around to that exam prep is going to be so easy. So you don't do it in the morning, and you don't do it in the afternoon, and then at 5 o'clock, all of a sudden, my friend Dwayne goes and calls me up to go and have a drink, and all of a sudden that doesn't happen. And I think part of it is that when you've had that experience of realizing that whatever life's vicissitudes crowd out all your good intentions, what you do is you basically realize that what you have to do is to figure out a way to make sure this happens. And so whatever that is, going to the gym first thing in the morning, waking up and doing your exam prep, getting it over with so that you don't have to think about it. Everybody has something different, but I think that the realization is that unless you do some of that planning, a lot of times those things don't happen.
Dr. B, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, and also talking about why do you think that it's helpful for people to have discipline, right? Like, what's the benefit for us?
Yeah. So
What's your pitch?
Yeah. I'm actually going to tell you a story that happened a couple of weeks ago that I was like, oh, this is so perfect. So my son, when I ask him to do something, he says he's going to do it. And so it's going to take, a later. Just literally your example of like.
I learned the tips on this.
So literally your example of like, I'll do it, he thinks in his head, I'm playing video games, I'll do it after this game. And then it's, okay, I'll do it after this. And then the next day is coming, he has it done, right? So what was happening, it was the, needing him to take out the trash before the garbage comes on Wednesday morning, and it was take it out on Monday. Didn't take it on Monday. And then Tuesday, before school, I'll come back after school. Okay, so then after school, he comes home, and I said, take out the trash. He goes, oh yes, I gotta do something, and I'll take it out. And so I said to him, okay, so if the trash does not go out before the garbage man, you're not gonna be able to play your computers for 2 days, play games. And then, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, got it, Mom, I'm all over it. Okay. Wednesday, last week comes, and I come downstairs, trash is still there. Garbage is already left. And so he comes down and for breakfast, and I said, well, you didn't take out the trash. The look on his face of like, oh. I'm like, yep, hand over your iPad, your game's gone. And what I said to him is that what this is one of those, it is an opportunity for you to learn how you think and how you process. Because what has happened is that when I ask you to do something, you automatically think, I will do it later. But you now know that later does not happen for you. So when Mom asks you to do something, if you don't do it at that moment, you're not going to do it. So when you're thinking about that, when you're talking about school, when you have an assignment and you think, oh, I'll do it when I get home, but you've got 30 minutes left in class, you need to do it in that 30 minutes you have in class, because when you get home, you're not going to do it. This is a natural consequence to the learning how your body and how your mind works. So learning that. So I think that teaches him that responsibility, but you learn so much about yourself. So the goal is to think, when I'm asked something, I need to do it now and not later. This is not a long-term goal for me. It's a short-term goal.
It gets me thinking about just our culture, that we just want instant gratification, and we're just lazy, like in general. My husband is a professor of literature, and he gave a talk to his students, and he said, writing a paper should not feel like eating a piece of chocolate cake, right? Like, it's hard. Like, that struggle is where you learn and where you grow. So I'm just wondering about, like, right? So, like, setting a goal is not like It shouldn't feel like eating a piece of chocolate cake. And so I'm just wondering what either one of you would add to that.
Chocolate cake is good. I mean, one thing I would add to what Dr. B said is that, one is we know a lot about why people do these things. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but the cycle of procrastination is actually pretty simple, which is just that what we are really averse to doing is incurring costs now. And in the future, it seems like the costs that we're foreseeing in the future are small. Except when you get to tomorrow, it's basically the same as today. And so, like, when we think about going on a diet, and you're at a nice conference, and there's amazing food, it's like, well, I'm going to start my diet tomorrow. And then guess what? Tomorrow looks the same as it does today. And some of the things is realizing this is the first step. And, I'll confess that I'm not the only one in the room who will throw my socks around or something. And then I go, oh yeah, I'll pick them up later. As if they're going to be easier to do later. Right? In fact, it's harder to do later because, and when I find myself saying that, I catch myself and do it. But part of it is like you have to catch yourself in doing that. So you have to recognize that and catch yourself, and that's a lot of stuff. And I think that part of the kind of muscle that we're building is to essentially recognize that our behavior in that moment is not something that's going to serve us well. And I think that, we recognize that in certain circumstances with the socks, but there's lots of things that look like the socks that we don't recognize.
Yeah, and I think to add to that is that I think we also sometimes we think that everybody is motivated by extrinsic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? We think so. It's always the exterior, it's the extra, the outside that's going to motivate you. But it's not always the same. It's not always the case for everybody. And, you've got to figure that out with whoever you're working with, and even with yourself. And I'll say, I was telling Todd, I was going to tell the story, and obviously I'm not going to name any names, but, I was with the Bulls for 9 years. So I'll say a player in the 9 years that I was with the Bulls.
Michael Jordan?
No. Considering I was in junior high when he was with the Bulls.
Show off.
Was it true? Yeah. So everybody was trying to get this player to do more, and it was extrinsic. It was. We had other players saying, I'll pay you.
Wait, let me just stop you for 1 second. So just define the difference between what is extrinsic motivation, what is intrinsic motivation.
So it's outside. It's things that it's monetary or things are
A reward.
Reward, right? Internal. It's intrinsic. It's something internal. Makes you feel better. Feel good.
Keep going.
And so, like players were saying, for every free throw you make, we'll give you $10,000. I mean, it was just ridiculous things trying to get this player to do X, Y, and Z. And I kept saying, literally for a couple of years, it's not extrinsic. He's not motivated that way. It's got to be intrinsic. Of course, everyone's like, no. Everybody's motivated by money. I'm like, this kid's not motivated by money. He's not going to do it. And so when they finally listened and turned it into intrinsic, things shifted because that's where his motivation was. It was not about giving him more money. It was more about internal, about the way that he wanted to feel, and he wanted to continue that feeling. And it was, for him, it was like the feeling was just I don't even know if I can really explain it, but I'm going to try to, is it's a feeling of just feeling peace. And so it was, and that's what he wanted. He loved that feeling of feeling peace. It was kind of like, it's that, when you wake up, it's that time when you wake up and you're laying in bed and you don't do anything and you think you lay there for 10 minutes, it's actually an hour, right? You think about everything, and I think that's what it is. That's the feeling. And so helping him find ways to get that feeling, that was motivating for him.
Yeah, I guess I just would add one other thing, which is that I think that a lot of activities consist of tasks or subtasks that some of which feel natural for people and some which are hard. And I think that sometimes what we do is we fool ourselves into thinking that what we're doing is the best thing by essentially doing the stuff that is easy for us. And easy for me doesn't have to be easy. So, again, I ran in college, and going out and running prodigious miles and stuff like that was something that was sort of like I was the kind of guy who would, if I was injured, I would want to run. And so but the things that I realized I didn't do were the things I didn't find so much fun. So I didn't stretch. I didn't lift weights. I didn't do all these kind of drills that everyone is doing these days. And I think that that has been really revealing to me, and it's sort of obvious now that part of it is that if what you want to do is be accomplished in an activity, you can't just do the easy parts. And there are lots of hard parts, so it's no fun to basically go and sit there and write, or some people like to write and some people don't like to revise. Or some people don't like to write the idea parts, but they don't want to write the literature review. And if you want to achieve something that requires you to do all of these activities, what you can't do is fool yourself into thinking that you're actually doing the best thing by always doing the things that you find easy.
You talked a little bit about gamification when we were at our call. So what is gamification, and how does that play in for some people?
Any of you use Duolingo? I'm sure some people in this room use Duolingo. I mean, I think some of it is like the nature of some goal setting is that people are, even if they're intrinsically motivated, they're creating these little games for themselves, right? So again, it's like I want to read more. I have a goal oftentimes of trying to read a really long book, like a 500-page book in 10 days. Okay. I'm an academic. I have a lot of time. I don't have a real job. But what that is a complete arbitrary number. I mean, I could have made it 2 weeks. I could have made it 5 days. I could have made it in the next 6 months. I created this thing that because at least when I set that goal, it's a time when I can fit in 50 pages or something of that sort. But again, that's a game in the sense that I know that every day I wake up and my mind is empty. Yep. Now, I hate that. And therefore, it encourages me to read, which is something that I actually like to do. So that's a game in some way. And it's a game that I am essentially playing with myself. But I think that one of the things that you can also do is use external forces. Again, Duolingo is a platform that has basically made a good amount of money by recognizing that what people want to do is learn languages. They're not good at learning languages in the old conventional way that we did before technology. And by having all these little bells and whistles of rewards and goals and streaks and all these kind of things that make Duolingo incredibly addictive, they've gotten people to essentially learn a language. Now, would it be better in some way if people were the kind of person who would just learn language naturally? Yeah. Is it serving a lot of people who want to learn Spanish or Chinese or French or whatever by having a platform which helps them to learn language? For sure.
I'm just going to ask one or two more questions. We'll see, and then if you all have questions, start thinking. Let's talk about failure and why failure is really important in the goal-setting process, and sort of what skills that develops in a person. Dr. B.
Such a big question.
Yeah. Just a little something. Just
throw in there.
Okay, steal your answer, by the way.
Yeah.
We say it all the time. Failure, the importance of failure. You learn from it, all of those things. And obviously, it's maybe not obviously, but it is true. It is true. Failure is quite important. The thing that I think about in working with the players I work with is that when you fail, I don't like to think of it as a failure. Because I think that we just have that dichotomy that's either win or lose, right? And so I'm always thinking that I want you to not think of it that way. I want you to think about it as a win-win. In everything you're doing, it's a win-win situation. About 90% of the things that we do is always a win-win, because you can't lose something you didn't have, and that's where the failure comes from. If you weren't running 30 miles a week and you didn't run it this week, you didn't lose it because you weren't doing it anyways, right? So you didn't fail, right? So think about it, but what did you learn from it? So it's a win-loss, or it's a win-learn instead of the win-loss. And so I always like to shift in that space of like, let's think about win-win, and let's think about win-learn. Let's not think about the failure, because just when saying the word, you automatically think that you are less than. And so I don't think that that's the way that we want to go into the next phase of what we're trying to accomplish. I want you to think about what can you learn from what just happened to take you to the next step, right? Because it's for me, it's the words. It is the words, it's the labels. You put that word out there, it sticks to you, and you're like, I failed at this, I failed at this, I failed at this. Well, I can't do that. I don't want you to think that way, right? You were working towards this, and what did you learn from this situation? And you did do this. What did you learn from this? How do we put all that together? So now let's work on this piece. But just looking at changing the language instead of failure, but thinking about what did you learn, and thinking about it that, again, you can't lose something. If you didn't have it, you didn't lose it.
Right, so what I'm hearing you say, like, when you put the word failure on it, you're creating a dead end.
Yes.
And what you're saying is when you have that flexibility, then you can pivot and keep moving forward and not losing that momentum.
Correct, which allows you to, again, shift the goals. You didn't reach it, then you change it, right? I think it's the language. Then you can, let me do something that I can do. Let's shift it to something a little bit lower so I can accomplish that, and then I go back to it, right?
Which is sort of just the definition of growth mindset, right? Like to keep moving forward. Dr. Wu?
Yeah, I would add two things. I mean, one is, again, the role of outsiders, mentors, parents, whatever. It's critical because, as much as you say this, people are going to interpret a lot of these things as failures. That's just reality. But I think it's for us or for others, our loved ones, to help us to make sense of that in lots of ways. I guess the other thing I would say is that part of it is that, we'll use the word here, failure, but is that if you don't fail ever, you're not being ambitious enough. So I think that's
Just eating chocolate cake.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. So you can basically set completely measly goals. Yeah, my goal today is to wake up. All right, well, I did that. I've accomplished that, and that's not much to brag about.
Right.
And if you set goals that are not very lofty, that are super attainable, or that, if you did fail, they would be extraordinary, then you're not being ambitious enough. And I think that's part of the thing that goes with this is that, whatever you call it, but we'll just use failure just for shorthand. Failure is a byproduct of striving to be ambitious. Now, if you always fail, that means you're being overly ambitious. If you never fail, that means you're not being ambitious enough. And I think where ambition and how ambitious you are, that comes as part of your life cycle. I think you don't, of course, with young kids, you don't want to basically set them up to fail too often. As an adult, I hope that what we can do is learn to set goals that we will sometimes walk away with these lessons that what we did was we tried something that was utterly audacious. We got pretty close. We got way closer than we might have expected, and that's something we learned from.
Celebrate. Well, so I'm doing the best. So let me open it up to see if anyone here has any questions. Yes, Joanne?
First of all, I want to know how old your son is.
How old is your son is the question.
He's 13.
13.
Bill. And the other question, sorry. So for the person who it's intrinsic, how did you help that person reach that kind of goal?
So just to repeat, so how do you help someone who is intrinsically motivated? How can an outside person support them tap into that intrinsic motivation?
So, I so like to think outside the box. I don't like to do just the normal things. And so I'm just kind of specifically what I did with that player is I bought a bunch of magazines and just brought them to my office and have him just flip through the magazines and anything that catches your eye, tear it out. So he just tore out things that caught his eyes, words, pictures, whatever the case may be. So as he did that, then we went back and looked at those things, and then I asked him, why did this catch your eye? Oh, what's the color? Oh, I like this word. My mom said this. So I want to cook. Well, those things. So then we had those conversations about what it was and what it meant to him. And then we just dived in deeper to why does this word or this phrase mean something to you? So we just kind of narrowed it down. And so then as we did that, we got to talking more and more about it was what made him feel good. And it was the words that made him feel good. And so I learned it that way. So it was just about bringing things, just starting really big, and then just kind of having a dialogue and narrow it down to try to figure that out. Because I think sometimes we don't know, right? They don't know, and we don't know what it is that's going to motivate them. And so as you're able to figure that out, but it just takes that time, and you have to like think about it, literally think about outside the box. You just don't think about something really simple. And I think that for me, I learned that years ago. So on a personal level, I know that, as your example, like if I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to go run a workout, I know that the thing that's going to get me out of the bed at 6 a.m. or whatever the case may be to go work out is that I can think about the feeling that I get in that 5 seconds in the shower. That's the motivation for me. And that just comes from trial and error, which is where I learned to do the magazine and try to figure those things out. So I say just try to have fun with it and the dialogue, and then you could be amazed at the information you get when you're just doing something that's not normal or what you're supposed to do. You get so much information from somebody.
But then did you use those words to motivate the individual?
Wait, let me just repeat. So she just wants to know if you use those words to motivate people.
Yes. So the words that he came up with, we put those words into like, well, what was the feeling? So try not to be too descriptive. So whatever the word was, it was a feeling behind that he liked, and so there was a connection there. So then we started with, they have their water bottles. We put the word on the water bottle. So then it was a reminder when he saw it, and that was a feeling. So then we used that as a cue. So then we saw that as a feeling, and then we went from there to other things. He's decided to wear like a band, and it had it on there. He wrote it on, there was like a dot on his shoe, and then we just narrowed it down to this simple thing. So when he saw it, it was the feeling, and it just brought back the feeling.
Right. I am thinking of our mentors, and Willie's one of our mentors, and I'm thinking of one of his kids that he works with that has been setting goals to build big Lego projects. And so what Willie did, and it's really frustrating, and the pieces are really small, and the frustration level is there very high, but our mentors get attuned to what motivates and excites the kids and taps into that. So I'm wondering, Dr. Wu, about intrinsic motivation, how can people tap into it for themselves, and how can they support someone else to tap into?
It's a good question. Sorry. I think what Dr. B said is right, is that what we all need to do is just be attentive to ourselves and basically think about what's easy for us to do, what we're naturally inclined to do. A lot of those things, of course, are not exactly the best behaviors, right? We're inclined to eat potato chips. I am intrinsically motivated to eat potato chips.
Yeah.
Now, that ain't something that I'm proud of. But there are lots of things in which you are into, I love looking at art, I love reading and things like that. No one has to pay me to go and read a novel. And that's something that I've discovered. And I think that what we can do is see that in other people and see that in ourselves. And I guess the other thing I would say is that part of it is that even if you're intrinsically motivated and stuff, is that it's still not bad to use these tricks that I'm calling it, these hacks, to get yourself to do more of these things because you're enjoying it. Because the fact is that you're intrinsically motivated to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you're still going to find the time to look at art or to read or whatever. And what you need to do is use goal setting to help you to make sure that you have that half hour to do the thing that you really want to. Great.
Thank you. At Friends of the Children, so I want to be mindful of people's time, so we're gonna wrap up, but then hopefully our speakers can stay around to chat people, but I know Dr. B, you have a call soon. So at Friends of the Children, we believe in helping our children build skills and helping them learn that they can work hard to be who they want to be later, and celebrating that to create that. So that they internalize that as part of their identity. I want to thank our incredible panelists for being here today. You're brilliant. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And I want to sincerely thank you all for being with us here today. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.